So
The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, noting the absence, let me make sure, of Mr. Herman. Public comment, Ms. Brennenstall. Hold on one second.
Good evening, everybody.
Go ahead.
Melanie Brennenstall, 202 Miller Street. I am coming to the board out of really a place of concern. I have 3 kids in elementary school, and what concerns me is what is the plan for the budget cuts. And I know I had emailed everybody a week ago, and I appreciate your responses, but I still can't wrap my head around making these cuts or looking at these things to remove from the budget as they come up versus having some idea, some plan of what needs to be cut. Because so far, we've had tech fee added to make up some of it. We've had the tuition, getting rid of that for the college program. And now we're talking about removing, not for 6 months, I understand, but discussing about a bus route removal. Now, those are 3 things that affect our kids directly. Where are some other things that we can cut that aren't taking directly away from our students? Can we cut some of the fat in some of the other parts of our budget? Are there things that don't directly impact them that we're looking at? That's what concerns me. And I'm afraid that all these little cuts that we're making, the kids are gonna have nothing left. And it bothers me that, not that all this work's been done, I think it's great, and I am all for making sure our buildings are safe and our kids are healthy and well taken care of and well educated, but you don't generally do a construction plan or a construction job at your house before you've secured the loan. We have essentially done the work, and now we're trying to get the loan to pay for it. We don't have the money. What are we gonna do in a few years if there's no money left? I know you're shaking, you guys are all shaking heads at me, but we're gonna be in a deficit. And then how are we gonna make up for that? And that's where I really, because we don't have that many programs for our kids at Beecher. It's not like there's, tons of after school and tons of extracurriculars that we can get rid of because they're low attended or whatnot. What we have, we need to hold on to. And the fact that there has not been a plan, and maybe I did misspeak in saying that about the money, and I apologize if I did, and please correct me, but where is the plan? The Finance Committee should have had a plan before we got to this point of what we were going to do and have. Now, and I know you can't really respond, but the referendum, so if it didn't pass, cuts had to be made, correct? That was the deal. So why was nothing looked at before the referendum was voted on as okay, this is what we're gonna cut, this, and this? Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I just say something? I don't think we've touched anything on tech fees. It's been discussed, but we never added a tech fee.
I didn't say you did. I said
Okay.
that's something, I said everything
Okay.
that has been discussed is only pertaining directly to the kids and the families.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Yes.
And as I, sent your email back, none of these are last minute decisions. That's not how school budgets work. And just like, the air conditioning, the one thing or the HVAC, the heating system at the elementary school would no longer work. So it was a good thing, first of all, we did it when we did. It was about roughly $2 million more to add AC to that. That came out of savings. What we are focusing on is our operating expenses. Operating expenses is different. Since we have been a tax cap district, we have never asked for a referendum. We have essentially outgrown where we are because of all of the improvements we've made through one-to-one technical support, one-to-one devices, and all of the different improvements we've made to make this school excellent. So just like people need a raise because operating expenses are no longer where they are, that's where we were at. That is a separate issue from HVAC. You should not ever drain your budget or your savings to operate a school. You should also not have $15 million in reserves of taxpayer money. To be 100% exemplary with the state of Illinois, we needed about $6.5 million. We are still exemplary. We are not broke, but we need to figure out how to live within the means that our tax cap district is set for to do.
And thank you for explaining, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But the one technology was not a big portion, if not all of that, funded by COVID money.
Oh, no. That was all
COVID.
pre-COVID.
Thank goodness it was before.
That was
COVID.
pre-COVID.
So all the kids had all the computers beforehand?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there
So where
was
did
no
our COVID money go
fee.
to?
Many
Salaries.
things. So many things, yeah, salary, that went to all of the PPE, that went to all of the, plexiglass, stuff like that. And we were able to use some of the ESSER monies towards HVAC as well. But there were also a whole long list, which we could get into, but we
Sure.
gotta stay with the budget.
Yes, and
Mind-
I
in mind.
appreciate that. And the
Yeah,
bottom line is just that it really does bother me that it is let's look at this, let's look at this. I feel like it's doing the district a disservice not having some kind of comprehensive plan of what we're looking at.
right. And I also, though, would feel that we were not giving everything the attention that we should, because there's nothing we can change right now with cuts and things like that. So as we go over these things slowly and consider them and talk them out, instead of spend one meeting and look at all these line items and no. Now we are taking time, every single meeting, to discuss these things with fidelity. And I think that is also very important, instead of getting line items and checking off what we don't want.
What I think,
Respectfully, I think it's important to look and be able to weigh them against each other versus holding them in our own.
Which is
separate.
why we will have a comprehensive list to do that. We've made a couple of finite decisions, but we're not doing all of those.
I think from what I understand from the resident, is that they're asking for a list
I
of
know.
what they're gonna do, what she
Yeah.
just said. But you also gotta remember, the HVAC and that, I think, people are saying that we went broke on that project. I hear it all the time, and I say, no, we're not broke.
And
But-
it's 100% incorrect to say that.
But I think, just moving forward in the future, I think that finance should have a meeting once a month. And, not just when things come to you guys, because at the end of the day, I believe everything should roll through finance before, just like anything else.
And it is, yeah. Okay, Ms. Weissel.
Hello, Weissel, Beecher, Illinois. Just to reiterate what I said at the transportation meeting, I completely agree with Mrs. Brundenstall. You need a plan. You don't just like one at a time, and you are making decisions as you go. Don't say, oh, we're not making any decisions. I know people are upset about your AP and Prairie State College decision, and just to do one at a time is not very comprehensive. You need a comprehensive plan. You need it one for a long time. And you don't have $15 million in the bank anymore.
Still exemplary. Dr. Gaham, do you have anything?
I have a budget presentation when the
Awesome.
board's ready for me.
Okay.
And all of the stuff that do we still have the place on the website for the referendum materials that you had out, or did that?
I
Is
believe
that
the
still
Paul's gonna give me a look. I believe the referendum information has been removed.
Okay, because I know on
But
that had
I'm
why
99%
we are,
sure.
the $1 million that were added and how we got in the predicament we are based on jobs that we legally had to create and all of those
I'm
things.
pretty sure all the videos are still on YouTube. I don't
Okay.
think we took those down, but.
So that could,
And that
just wondering.
explains the HVAC versus
Yeah.
operating costs for that
Yeah.
misinformation. Okay.
Paul, do we have a website still or no?
We could put the referendum information back up there, it's currently not, all the videos are still up
Okay.
Videos are still okay.
Do I look good in them, Paul?
there.
Thank you.
Those are good as gold.
All right.
All right, when you're ready.
All right, so I apologize to the board. I have given you a hard copy. We're gonna kind of angle it this way so the community who is watching at home, I'm guessing we have 3,000 to 4,000 viewers.
Yes.
It is also be posted on the website underneath the board budget as well. So kind of walking you through this. So here's your presentation. Here is your FY22 in review. So when you adopted the budget way back last year in September, we budgeted $15,449,000. The actual revenue came out at $18.4 Now, that is a difference of $3 million. Man, you're that far off, Gaham, in your first year, you're a terrible superintendent? Maybe. Or it could be the fact that the additional revenue, am I looking at the right page? Yeah, sorry, I'm looking over Marla's shoulder, so I don't have to look at there. The additional revenue came in large part to the COVID ESSER money, the reclamation that we're having through state aid, and the additional EBF money that came from the state as well. So in revenue, unexpectedly, we got $3 million additional, which is a fantastic thing. So going at the expenditures, last year you approved a budget expenditure of $17.1 million, and we actually only spent, now I'm going to say only because of a caveat, we spent $18.7 million. That's a difference of 1.5. Why is that a good thing? Remember, you added a $1.7 million HVAC payment on this budget. And so by adding a $1.7 million budget addition to it, we were only 1.5 over. That means overall, we actually came in under budget last year. If you take out the HVAC project that we chose, we actually came in under budget. Now again, you approved a budget deficit last year, so it would have been closer. So going to the next page, what did you adopt? You actually adopted a $1.7 million deficit last year. We got it down to $300,000 with an additional $1.7 million project involved. So we're doing work. Now again, I understand a lot of that had to do with the extra revenue that came in from the state. So when I move forward with this presentation, please understand I'm under the understanding and the assumption that the state is not going to be giving us an additional $3 million this year. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be working our tails off to find grants and money where we can, but to assume that we're going to get that money again this year would not be reasonable on my end. If we do, fantastic. If we don't, at least you guys have an expectation of where we're at this year. So the index, again, Brad started talking about this eons ago, and then I showed it. Now, if you remember I actually think it's still on the website. My projection here was 10 and some, or I'm sorry, not 10, was 10, $11 million. It's still at 13. So you'll see 1 year later, you're actually only $100,000 less at the exact same moment with all those projects in place. So no, we don't have $15 million in the bank as of June 30th. Now, you just paid a very hefty sum to GRP, that's gone. But at June 30th, the exact same time, you were at 13.8, or 13.38. Okay?
Julie said still.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes. So what does this year look like? So again, we're budgeting with the assumption that COVID numbers and EBF are going to go back to what they were closer in 2021 versus 22. So we are budgeting a FY23 of $15.8 million. Last year's actual, just to kind of give you a comparison again, is 18.4. So that is a decrease in funding of about $2.5 million. I hope and pray that I'm wrong on that number. But again, it is what we are expected to see from the state and from local funds. In terms of expenditures, this year our budget is 21.17. The actual last year was 18.7. That is an increase of 2.4. Please remember last year, or this year, you have a $4 million HVAC project you are paying for. Okay, so that is where you're at. That's why it's at 21 million. So if you want to do some basic math, yes, 21 minus 4 is 17 million. So your deficit last year was actually 332,000. The projected deficit this year will be 5.275. The bulk of that, folks, is the HVAC, the asbestos, and the bathroom, because all of that was done in the summer, so it's on this budget. So
So minus those, what is the actual there?
what is the actual deficit? I don't have that number, but
Okay.
You're going to be,
So that we just look at operating. that's
you might be just a shade over under $1 million.
Okay.
So, again, projected. Things happen. So going to that wonderful Beecher Index, my projection is that we're going to have about 8.1 in the bank at this time next year.
Still exempt.
Correct. Okay. And again, when you talk about exemplary, what the state looks at is you need to have 25% of your state, 4 years of EBF in the bank. Since we are not a heavy state-run district, we only get 2.3, 2.6 from the state. We get most of our stuff from local revenue, so when you say it's exemplary, it's because it's based on that 2.3 number. So in reality, it's closer to like 7.5, but if you had 7.5 in the bank, you now can have the state stop paying you for 3 years and not see a drastic change. That's what that star rating means that she keeps referring to.
Yep.
So again, projected. So good news, because that's my job, is to show you guys some good news, because I can't be Chicken Little. Without the HVAC project, the budget would actually be $1.7 million less than we spent last year, and actually $600,000 less than you adopted the year before. So what I'm telling you is, we have already cut $600,000 in things that you guys don't need to approve because it's not part of your world. It's daily, day-to-day operations. For instance, I met with Joe Duncan. He says, hey Jack, here's my wish list. This is what I got last year. Well, Mr. Duncan, here's what you get this year. Those are things that don't have to come through you guys because they're part of the budget. They're part of the overall numbers, but they're things that, you know, we can push off for a year. Transportation. We didn't buy a bus. So there's no bus on this one, so there's $90,000 to $120,000. So things like that that don't require boards to discuss and have conversations about can be removed. Overall budgets, when I talked to Mr. Meyer, Ms. Black, and Dr. Kwasny, hey, this is what you spent last year, this is what you get to spend this year. And again, the caveat is always the kids don't suffer in the classroom. If you need a whiteboard, get a whiteboard. If you need X, Y, and Z, get those things. However, what we don't need is, you know, what is the tchotchkes, the things that aren't necessary. You know, trim the fat. I heard Ms. Brennan say that's where we're trimming the fat. And that's my job as the superintendent, is to make sure those things are done well before you guys have to face those kind of things. So when you come here and I present to you things that could save money, it's because they're things that you guys have already have taken action on, whether that be with me or Mr. Cox, or things that would be a concern to the community. So there are plenty of things that we are already addressing in our buildings that we can talk about.
Great.
So I heard the plan. So the plan, and again, I know the community wants me to say, this is what we're doing, that's how I can get you $2 million. I would love to be able to do that. Love it. The two big problems with that is, one, I don't know the real revenue for this year. And there's not a state superintendent, well, I'm sure there's some really excellent ones, but there's not a superintendent in the state of Illinois who can tell you what the revenue is going to be. So if I can't come to you and say, well, I want to cut 3 teachers if the revenue isn't 15 million, it's really 17 million. That's a significant difference in terms of what you can and cannot plan for. Now, I have been very adamant about certain programs that we run that don't affect kids specifically, that we will address throughout the year, that will require you guys to address. One of them is an IGA that we have with the village that's up in April, that's costing us $70,000 a year. I've made no beef about it. It's a program that we've talked about before. That's one of those cuts I would suggest, but again, it would be up to you guys. So those are the things we're talking about. Right now, we have an art program without an art teacher. So as a superintendent, I need to talk to Mr. Meyer and say, hey, do you have an art teacher? Because if you don't have an art teacher, I can't continue to pay $42,000 for an art program that doesn't exist. So those are the discussions that I have with my staff behind the doors that don't require you guys to be burdened with those things. Okay. Now, if that were to happen, obviously I'd present it to you, talk to you guys about it, and say this is why we had to do it. Okay, so that's why when it comes to what's the plan, I need to know revenue. And secondly, I need to know where we're going to be after this year, because I'm giving you a budget of $21 million. That's really not everything that's going to happen year to year. So we're taking away HVAC projects. We're taking away. There's no more abatement. There's no more bathrooms. Those big ticket items are off the books. We have a negotiation this year with the teachers' union. So all these things, it's a very cumbersome year when it comes to the budget. So at the end of the year, because this is the budget you guys have already basically worked on this past year with approving, and now I'm telling you the numbers. So when we come in next year, now I can say last year's revenue was actually the same as 2022. Praise whatever gods you want to pray to. Our revenue, we slashed all these things, our revenue is actually still at 17 million. So our expenditures are at 17 and a half. Our revenues are actually at 16 and 3/4. Hey, these spots right here, if we remove it, we're back in the black. I have every expectation of being back in the black by FY '25. Not '24, not next year. But if the levy is where they tell me it's gonna be, which is 5%, that's gonna be significant for our district, because it's the first time you've had a 5% levy ever. That's gonna help us out. Plus, rolling back some of the expenses. Plus, if EBF stays where it's supposed to stay, because the state passed a law, but we all know how the state of Illinois passes laws and kind of finds ways to spend things. I truly believe we're gonna be back in the black FY '25. So in 2 years from now, you'll hear me saying, hey, we have a $300,000 surplus projected.
You missed a really good opportunity to play some ACDC.
I did,
Okay, I like that.
so.
I mean, clearly, I mean, when we started, talking finances with you and everything, I knew that you were gonna be really good at this, but I feel like,
Well, I don't know about that yet. It's only year one, but
I know, but this.
we're spending where we
It's gonna get it all
can.
back on track.
Yeah. To answer a few other questions I heard, ESSER 1 was primarily PPE. ESSER 2 was some HVAC work that was done at the junior high, which was minimal, instructional aids, and online programs, and I believe one round of Chromebooks. One round of Chromebooks was bought out of that. That might have been the digital equity grant, but I could be wrong, Paul. ESSER 3, again, instructional aids, HVAC project, and we're actually looking to recoup some of that money as well. Summer school stipends, after-school tutoring stipends, and there's a few other things, so that's where that money went. Any questions about the budget or my presentation? Or how I figured out how not to have transitions on, which is nice, before it was zooming across the screen.
I like that. Okay.
All right.
Any questions,
And like I said, I'll put this,
comments, concerns?
I'll put this on the website I mean, Paul will put it on the website for me when I give it to him.
It's everything he's talked about at every meeting we've had for the past year.
Yes, we have. Yes. Yes. I believe everything, I know everything has been open and transparent here. So no questions, anything? No? Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
This one does have the caveat